Hey, it's Jessie from Squeegee Ink and welcome back to Printer's Corner. This is where I answer questions that we have been given from social media and I go into a little bit more depth. I have 3 more questions today and they're about the best press for a manual printer to buy. We've also got one about printing onto polyester and another one printing onto polyester, but this is polyester shirts. So there are some differences. If you want to skip ahead in the video to any of the timestamps where I specifically answer the question you're interested in, please feel free to go ahead. Otherwise, stick around and see what else I've got to say. Our first question is from Rose Skull Print, and they've said, have you tried the M&R Chameleon with air clamps or the Anatol Thunder? I don't know which one to get. I actually haven't tried the Anatol Thunder, but I have been up close to the Chameleon and it's incredibly close to what I've got in the background here. So this is the Cruiser. I've done like whole YouTube videos about the Cruiser and all the different variations on it and stuff and why I chose this press. The Chameleon isn't that much different, it just has more heads. I think it's also got the 4 platens, so it is very close. It's just if you're going into very, very complicated artwork where you need lots of screens available. Some of our colleagues have them. It's not something I've actually printed with. For advice for manual printers choosing their press, I would just say go to somebody who's close, who has it, so that you're getting good support with it. Maybe you can even get someone to come and set up the press correctly, because we actually had a guy from Screen Print Mod here for like, I'd say half a day, just leveling out the press, making sure it was set at the right height for us. And this is actually a second-hand press, but they hold their value and there's nothing to them really. There's nothing mechanical really or electrical to go wrong. We've just found that it's really easy to maintain and easy to get. Sorry, I can't really give much advice on the Anatol Thunder. I'll just try and find a fellow printer who uses it. Also with the air clamps, I'd like to know if other people find that surely if you're having air clamps, that's where you'll need an air compressor to hold down the screens, which is something that you have to think about getting for your studio as a big compressor and whether that's worth it. Because we do some very intricate details and lining up and registration with just these manual side clamps here. So I don't particularly think I'd want to invest in air clamps if the option was there, because I'm very happy with what I've got. If you can take any of that as advice, I'm not sure. I'll go on to the second question. This is from Aaron Cummings and he says, is this 1 part plastisol that has set properly? Am I way behind the game? Still mixing mine, always end up with waste. Interested. What he's referring to there is that we're printing these polyester jackets and this is like notoriously quite difficult to print on because it's a super smooth fabric that's very difficult for the ink to hold on to. So I think what Aaron has done in the past is probably added a catalyst to his ink, and the catalyst basically speeds up a chemical reaction and hardens the ink onto slippery garments, things like nylons and some polyesters, and makes it more durable and basically holds on there and cures the ink a little bit better. It's definitely something to do, but once you've used that ink, the catalyst means that the chemical reaction is going to keep on happening and you've only got a few hours to use up that ink, which isn't very practical, and that's why he's getting the waste when he's printing with it. With this polyester jacket, I want to show you which one we're doing. It's this one. I think it's really cool. I really love printing this. This is the Recycled Bottles Coach jacket. So the Coacher or Coacher jacket by Stanley Stella, and you can see we've gone for this white, really nice white opaque ink on the back there, but there's nothing for the ink to hold on to. Whereas if you're printing onto fabrics, there's all those fibres that the ink can really adhere and bind to, but this is slippery. It could even have a waterproof coating on some of these jackets, so you really have to pick your ink very precisely. We did quite a few tests with it. We did try normal nylon inks and that type of thing, but we went back to our experience on printing metals, plastics, glasses and all those things, and we knew that you had to get a very specific ink for the application. So we actually sent away this is a bit overkill, but if we did the work for you, so hopefully you don't have to. We sent away a bit of this jacket because it's the polyester. We went to a company called Lysis Technologies, who we've worked with loads of times, and they actually match their ink up to the substrate that you've sent them, and they do a little test. They say how well the abrasion worked on it and even what mesh to use, all that type of thing. They've just literally call it screen polyester because they supply lots of different print methods, and this we went for the matte white, and that was just a one part, but it is quite a scary ink to work with because it dries incredibly quickly. You need a friend to help you unload the press and put the jackets everywhere, because they'll just be air drying within minutes. They're touch dry, and then over the course of a day or two, then they become really cured, and then they're resistant to abrasion. There you go. You're not really behind the times, but you can get ink that is specialist for all types of materials. Don't be scared to reach out to someone like Apollo Inks or Lysis, because it's literally what they do all day. They're in labs testing ink on fabrics, so yeah, it's something to look into. Our third question is from 24 Quiche. I have to print on 100 safety orange polyester t-shirts. What ink and screen mesh would you recommend? Also, could it be cured with a heat press like cotton shirts with no issues? Are they saying anything about Plastisol ink? No, I'm not quite sure whether they're printing with Plastisol or water-based. There are water-based now that have been developed for printing onto polyesters. I don't quite see why you wouldn't be able to use those in a very similar way. If this is talking about the risk of safety orange causing dye migration into the inks, then I would go for a low cure Plastisol ink. What I mean by that is some of the certain colours, and for example like safety colours or bright red, things like that, sometimes if you get them too hot, then the dye can actually leach into the ink, and then it actually is quite a slow reaction that happens if you just heat it up a little bit too much. And over the next 12 hours, it can leach into, say, white from a red shirt, and it just, all the dye just turns the white ink into pink, and it looks horrendous, and there's no going back from it. You basically have to do the shirts again and try not to get them as hot. But there's low cure Plastisol inks available, and they basically cure at a lower temperature, so you don't ever really reach that point where you've let the dye get into the inks. You print with them in pretty much exactly the same way. I'm not really sure whether there's a cost difference or anything in getting low cure inks, but that's probably the answer, and that's the way that I would personally do it. Because then, if your only option is to cure the ink on a heat press even, you could lower the temperature on that as well. Do some tests, print one, and I know it might seem like a waste of time, but print one, leave it overnight, and see if you've got any dye migration, because you don't want to print a box and then have a nightmare. Another quick tip for avoiding dye migration is once they're off being cured, don't stack them up when they're hot, because then you're basically prolonging the time when the ink is hot, and then you can actually encourage more dye migration. It is a bit of a nightmare, but you can think of ways to help it. Just sort of another way, if you are scared of the orange coming into an ink, you can try and guide the customer into using black ink, because white ink looks horrible on safety orange anyway, and it's very difficult to read. And you could also use a dye blocking base. There's like these grey underbases that you can use which catch the dye. Sorry if that went a bit too overboard, but hopefully I've helped with the question as well. So to round up this week's question, M&R or Anatol, which t-shirt carousel? I'm sticking with Team Blue, and I'm saying M&R.